The doors of Big Rick's Roadhouse exploded inward with a crash that made every head turn. The jukebox was playing Lynyrd Skynyrd. The smell of burgers and beer hung thick in the air, and 23 members of the Iron Knights Motorcycle Club were scattered across the bar on a lazy Saturday afternoon when the little girl stumbled through the entrance. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, blonde hair tangled and wild, one shoe missing, her pink t-shirt torn at the shoulder. But it was her face that made Big Rick drop the glass he was polishing. Tears carved clean lines through the dirt on her cheeks, her eyes wide and terrified, her chest heaving like she'd run a marathon. The child's gaze swept across the room, taking in the leather cuts, the tattooed arms, the bearded faces that most people crossed the street to avoid. For a moment, nobody moved. Then she opened her mouth and the words that came out changed everything. Please. Her voice cracked, desperate and small. Please help me. He's hurting my mom. He's hurting her right now and nobody will stop him. Big Rick was around the bar before his brain caught up to his body. He dropped to one knee in front of the girl, making himself smaller, less threatening. His voice came out gentle, the same tone he used with his own grandkids. Slow down, sweetheart. Who's hurting your mom? My stepdad. Sophie's whole body trembled. Her hands clutched at Rick's leather vest. He's a cop and he's hitting her and she's bleeding and I ran, but nobody would help and I remembered you. You helped at the school thing. You're good people. Please, you have to come now. Behind Rick, chairs scraped back. Diesel, a mountain of a man with arms like tree trunks and a skull bandana, was already reaching for his keys. Maven, a 62-year-old grandmother whose gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, had her phone out. Knuckles, a former Marine with scars that told stories he never spoke, was moving toward the door. Where's your house, honey? Rick kept his voice steady even as rage built in his chest. 15 Maple Street. Sophie's voice hitched. The blue house with the white fence. Please hurry, please. He's going to kill her this time, I know he is. Rick looked up and caught Diesel's eye. The big man nodded once, already punching the address into his phone, 2 blocks away. Rick turned back to Sophie, his weathered hands carefully gripping her shoulders. You did good, sweetheart. You did exactly right coming here. We're going to help your mom, I promise. The word promise hung in the air like an oath. In the Iron Knights, promises meant something. They were bonds forged in loyalty and kept through action. Maven knelt beside them, producing a tissue from somewhere and gently wiping Sophie's face. What's your name, brave girl? Sophie. Okay, Sophie. I'm Maven. That big scary guy is Diesel, but he's actually a teddy bear who cries at Disney movies. Sophie's lips twitched, almost a smile, and Maven squeezed her hand. You're safe now. We've got you. Rick stood, his 6'4" frame unfolding, and the room erupted into controlled chaos. Boots hit the floor, engines roared to life outside, but there was no panic. These were people who'd ridden through storms and stood together through worse. This was what they did. Diesel, Knuckles, Maven, Torch, you're with me. Rick's voice cut through the noise. Reaper, you stay with Sophie. Keep her safe. The rest of you follow, but keep your distance. We don't know what we're walking into. I want to come. Sophie's voice was stronger now, but Rick shook his head. Not yet, sweetheart. Let us check things out first. Reaper here used to be an EMT. He's going to make sure you're okay while we go help your mom. Reaper stepped forward, a lean man with kind eyes and graying temples. He had grandkids Sophie's age. His voice was soft. How about we get you some water and maybe a cookie? You ran pretty far, didn't you? Sophie nodded, suddenly exhausted, and Reaper led her gently toward a corner booth. As Rick headed for the door, he heard her whisper, You promise you'll help her? Rick turned back, met those terrified eyes, and felt something fundamental shift in his chest. I promise. On my life, kid, we don't leave people behind. The ride to Maple Street took 90 seconds, 6 motorcycles, engines growling like angry beasts, chrome flashing in the afternoon sun. Big Rick's mind raced as they covered the distance. A cop. The girl said her stepdad was a cop. That complicated things, made them dangerous. The blue house with the white fence appeared around the corner. and Rick's heart sank. 2 patrol cars were already parked out front, lights off. Not responding to an emergency then. Something else. The bikers killed their engines, and the sudden silence felt ominous. Rick could hear shouting from inside the house, a woman's voice, high and frightened, a man's voice, angry and controlled, and underneath it, the low murmur of other men. Rick dismounted and started up the walk. Diesel fell in beside him, a wall of muscle and loyalty. The front door was ajar. Through it, Rick could see into the living room where a scene from his worst nightmares was playing out. A woman sat on the couch, holding an ice pack to her face. Even from here, Rick could see the swelling around her eye, the split lip, the way she held her ribs. This had to be Sophie's mom. She was maybe 35, with the same blonde hair as her daughter and eyes that were trying so hard to look anywhere but at the man standing over her. The man wore jeans and a polo shirt, but everything about him screamed cop. The way he stood, the way he held himself, the casual authority in his posture. Detective Marcus Webb, Rick would learn later, 15-year veteran, decorated officer, pillar of the community. He was explaining something to 2 uniformed officers who stood in the corner looking uncomfortable. It was an accident, boys. Webb's voice, carried through the open door, reasonable and calm. Jenny tripped on the stairs. Got dizzy, you know how she is. I called you guys just to be safe, make sure she didn't need an ambulance, but she's fine. Aren't you, honey? Jennifer's mouth opened, closed. She nodded, barely. Rick felt Diesel tense beside him, felt his own hands curl into fists. Every instinct screamed at him to charge in there, to pull that smug son of a bitch away from that terrified woman and teach him what it felt like to be helpless. But Rick had lived long enough to know when rage would only make things worse. He knocked, loud and firm, on the doorframe. All 4 heads turned. Webb's expression flickered through surprise, annoyance, and then settled into something calculating. The 2 officers' hands moved automatically toward their belts. Jennifer's eyes went wide, then wider, when she saw the leather cuts in the patches. Can I help you? Webb's voice was pleasant, but his eyes were cold. Rick stepped into the doorway, filling it. We're looking for Jennifer and Sophie. Got a call that they might need assistance. I'm Jennifer's husband, Detective Marcus Webb. Everything's fine here. Family matter already handled. Webb moved slightly, positioning himself between Rick and Jennifer. Officers Ramirez and Patterson here can confirm that. The 2 cops nodded, but Rick noticed how Officer Ramirez wouldn't meet his eyes, how Patterson shifted his weight uncomfortably. That's funny. Rick's voice was conversational, almost friendly. Because your daughter just ran into my bar 2 blocks away, crying and terrified, saying her mom was being beaten, begging us to help. The room went absolutely still. Jennifer made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Webb's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. My stepdaughter has an active imagination. Sometimes she gets confused. Don't you, Sophie? He looked at Jennifer, and Rick saw the threat in that look, the promise of consequences. Jennifer opened her mouth, and Rick knew with absolute certainty that she was about to back her husband's story, about to trap herself deeper in this nightmare. She's 8 years old. Maven's voice came from behind Rick, and the older woman pushed past him into the house with the confidence of someone who'd raised 4 kids and buried a husband. She's 8 and she ran barefoot through town because she thought her mother was dying. So why don't we all stop pretending this is fine? Ma'am, you need to leave. Officer Patterson finally spoke, his voice strained. This is a private residence. This is a crime scene. Diesel's bass rumble made the windows rattle. And you're helping him cover it up. Webb's pleasant mask cracked slightly. I don't know who you people think you are, but you're about to get charged with harassment and trespassing. I suggest you get on your bikes and ride away before things get ugly. Rick took 1 step further into the room. Just 1. But something in his rolling face, some echo of old battlefields and promises kept in blood, made Webb take an involuntary step back. Here's what's going to happen, Detective. Rick's voice was quiet, deadly. We're not leaving. Sophie is safe and she's staying safe. And Jennifer here is going to decide what she wants to do next without you standing over her like a prison guard. You can't do that. Webb's composure was slipping. I'm a police officer, you're bikers. Who do you think people are going to believe? Don't know, but I'm willing to find out. Rick pulled out his phone, opened the camera, and started recording. Hi there. My name is Rick Morrison. I'm standing in the home of Detective Marcus Webb. His 8-year-old stepdaughter ran into my establishment approximately 10 minutes ago, terrified and crying, stating her mother was being beaten. I'm now looking at Jennifer Webb, who has visible injuries to her face and is clearly in distress. Also present are Officers Ramirez and Patterson, who appear to be assisting Detective Webb in some capacity. Put that phone away. Webb's voice rose for the first time. Rick kept recording, kept talking. Jennifer, do you feel safe right now? Do you need medical attention? Would you like to speak to someone who isn't your husband or his co-workers? Jennifer's eyes met Rick's. In them, he saw years of fear, of learned helplessness, of hope beaten down so many times it barely flickered. But it was there, that tiny spark. Her mouth opened. Webb moved. Jenny, don't. The threat in those 2 words was crystal clear. And that's when Torch, the club's VP and a man who'd seen too much combat to be intimidated by anyone, stepped into the house with his own phone recording. Behind him, Knuckles appeared, then Smokey, then Chains. One by one, the Iron Knights filled the doorway, a wall of leather and loyalty and witnesses. Jennifer looked at them, looked at her husband, looked at the 2 officers who were supposed to protect and serve. She was trembling so hard, Rick could see it from across the room. Then she stood, wavering, and spoke words that would echo through the next 72 hours. I want to see my daughter. Her voice cracked but held. I want to see Sophie, and I want these men she trusted to stay with me until I do. Webb lunged, Rick moved, and the officers finally stepped between them. Officer Ramirez grabbed Webb's arm while Patterson positioned himself between the detective and Rick. The living room crackled with tension, everyone frozen in a moment that could explode into violence with one wrong move. Rick kept his hands visible, kept his body language non-threatening, but he didn't back down. Behind him, his brothers formed a wall of witnesses, phones still recording. Detective Webb. Patterson's voice was tight. Maybe we should all take a breath here. Webb shook off Ramirez's grip, smoothing his shirt with deliberate calm. His mask slipped back into place, the reasonable man dealing with unreasonable people. You're right. Everyone needs to calm down. His eyes found Jennifer, still standing but swaying slightly. Baby, why don't you sit down? You're not well. The way he said it, gentle and concerned, would have sounded perfect to anyone who hadn't seen the threat in his eyes 30 seconds earlier. Jennifer sank back onto the couch, and Rick watched her fold in on herself, making herself smaller. He'd seen that before. In war zones, in shelters, in the haunted eyes of people who'd learned that taking up space meant getting hurt. Mrs. Webb. Rick kept his voice soft, non-threatening. Do you want medical attention? We can call an ambulance. No pressure, just asking. She's fine. Webb answered for her. Already told you she fell, hit her face on the banister. Happens. She gets dizzy spells sometimes. I can speak for myself. Jennifer's voice was barely above a whisper, but every word took visible courage. I don't need an ambulance. Webb's smile was triumphant. See? Everything's fine. Now if you gentlemen would leave my home before I have you arrested for trespassing and harassment. Rick glanced at Officer Ramirez, saw the conflict written across the younger man's face. Ramirez couldn't have been more than 25, probably on the force less than 5 years. His eyes kept darting between Webb and Jennifer, between the badge and the battered woman. Officer, Rick addressed Ramirez directly. You see those injuries? You hear that an 8-year-old child ran away terrified? And you're going to do nothing? Ramirez's jaw worked. It's complicated. How? Maven's voice cut through the room like a blade. Woman's got a black eye and a split lip. Child's traumatized. What's complicated? Patterson, older and harder, stepped forward. Ma'am, with all due respect, you don't understand the situation. Detective Webb called us for a welfare check. We've assessed the situation. Mrs. Webb says she fell. That's the end of it. That's not the end of anything. Diesel's growl made Patterson's hand drift toward his weapon. That's barely the beginning. Everyone needs to stand down right now. Patterson's voice rose. You're interfering with police business. Leave voluntarily or leave in cuffs. Your choice. Rick felt his brothers bristle behind him, felt the situation balanced on a knife's edge. He'd been in enough tight spots to recognize when force would lose everything. Webb knew it too. The detective stood behind the two officers, his posture relaxed, a slight smirk playing at his lips. He was untouchable, and he knew it. We'll go. Rick's words surprised everyone, including his own crew. But this isn't over. Yes, it is. Webb's voice was pleasant again. And if you or any of your friends come near my family again, I'll have you arrested for stalking, harassment, and anything else I can make stick. I'm a decorated police officer. You're bikers with records. How do you think that plays out? Rick held Webb's gaze for a long moment, reading the calculation there, the absolute certainty that the system would protect him. Then he turned to Jennifer, whose eyes were squeezed shut, tears tracking down her bruised face. Mrs. Webb. Rick's voice was gentle. Sophie's safe. She's at my bar with good people who care about her. Whenever you want to see her, whenever you need anything, you call. Someone give her my number. Maven stepped forward before anyone could stop her, pressing a business card into Jennifer's hand. Big Rick's Roadhouse. That's the number. Anytime, day or night. We answer. Get out. Webb's voice went cold. Now. The bikers retreated, slowly, phones still recording until they were on the porch. The door slammed behind them with finality. Rick stood on the walkway, staring at that closed door, hands clenched so tight his knuckles were white. We just left her. Torch's voice was hollow. We left her with him. We didn't have a choice. Rick forced the words through gritted teeth. We put hands on him. We go to jail. She recants everything because he threatens her or Sophie, and then we can't help it all. So we do nothing? Diesel looked like he wanted to put his fist through something. An 8-year-old kid asks for help, and we walk away? We don't walk away. Maven's voice was firm. We regroup. We think. And we come back with a better plan. They returned to the roadhouse to find Sophie curled in a corner booth with Reaper, a coloring book spread between them that neither was paying attention to. The moment she saw them, she scrambled out of the seat. Where's my mom? Is she okay? Did you help her? Rick knelt down, meeting her eyes, hating the words he had to say. Your mom's safe right now, sweetheart. But it's complicated. Sophie's face crumpled. You didn't help her. Nobody helps her. Nobody ever helps. That's not true. Rick caught her shoulders gently. We tried, Sophie. But your stepdad, he's got other police officers there, and the law, it's tricky when adults are involved. He's going to hurt her worse now. Sophie's voice broke. Because I ran. Because I told. He always said nobody would believe me. He was right. The defeat in that small voice, the learned helplessness of a child who'd seen promises broken too many times, cut Rick deeper than any knife. He pulled her into a hug, feeling her sob against his chest. Listen to me. Rick waited until she pulled back, until she was looking at him. I made you a promise. I don't break promises. This isn't over. But I need you to trust me a little longer. Can you do that? Sophie nodded, but her eyes were older than they should be, full of doubt earned through hard experience. Maven sat down beside them. Sophie, honey, I need to ask you some hard questions. Is that okay? The girl nodded. How long has your stepdad been hurting your mom? Since last year. Maybe longer. Sophie's voice was mechanical, reciting facts. It started after they got married. He was nice before. Really nice. Mom was so happy. Her real dad, he died when she was 5. Some kind of accident at work. Rick watched the child carefully compartmentalize trauma. Then Marcus moved in, and everything changed. What changed? Maven's voice was gentle but probing. He got mad about little things. Dinner not being right. The house not being clean enough. Mom not paying enough attention to him. At first he just yelled. Then he pushed her once. She fell and hurt her knee. He cried and said he was sorry, bought her flowers, took us to the beach. Mom said everyone makes mistakes. Rick closed his eyes, recognizing the pattern, the cycle. Violence followed by remorse, gifts, promises to change. Just long enough for the victim to hope, to stay. Then it starts again, worse each time. Then what? Maven prompted. Then it happened again. And again. And he stopped saying sorry. Sophie's voice went flat. Now he just does it. Usually when I'm supposed to be asleep, but I hear. I always hear. And sometimes, if I come downstairs, he stops. But then later he tells Mom it's my fault he got so angry, that I'm causing problems in their marriage. Jesus, Diesel turned away, his massive shoulders shaking. Did he ever hurt you, Sophie? Rick had to ask, though he dreaded the answer. Sophie shook her head. No, never. Mom always makes sure I'm not there. One time I tried to stop him and Mom yelled at me to go to my room. She pushed me out and locked the door. I think she was protecting me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But sometimes I think maybe if I was braver, if I fought harder, I could make him stop. No. Maven's voice was fierce. She gripped Sophie's hands. Listen to me, brave girl. None of this is your fault. Not one single bit. Adults are responsible for their choices. Your stepdad chooses to hurt your mom. That's on him. Your mom is trying to protect you the only way she knows how. And you, running here, asking for help? That's the bravest thing anyone can do, but it didn't work. Sophie's eyes filled again. You had to leave. He's still there. Rick's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. He opened it and felt his blood run cold. A photo of Jennifer, fresh bruises visible. Below it, a message in Jennifer's handwriting, clearly forced. Please don't come back. You're making it worse. Leave us alone. Another text came through, this time from Webb's number. Rick knew it was Webb without checking. Stay away from my family, biker trash. This is your only warning. Rick showed Maven the messages. Her face went hard as stone. He's covering his bases, making sure we know he's got control. What's that? Sophie tried to see the phone. Nothing, sweetheart. Rick tucked it away. Just grown-up stuff. But something in Sophie's expression told Rick she knew. This child had learned to read danger in glances and silences, had developed the hypervigilance that came from living in a war zone that looked like a normal house. The rest of the afternoon crawled by. Rick made calls, trying to find angles, options, ways in. He contacted a lawyer, Danny Mendez, who did pro bono work for domestic violence victims. Danny's assessment was brutally honest. Without Jennifer willing to press charges, there's nothing. She's gotta want help, Rick. And even if she does, with him being a cop, that's an uphill battle. The system protects its own. You know that. Rick called the local domestic violence hotline, spoke to an advocate named Patricia who'd been doing this work for 20 years. Her advice was similar. All we can do is be there when she's ready. Most victims leave 7 times before they leave for good. The danger actually increases when they try to escape. He'll know she's thinking about it now. He'll watch her closer, control her more. The best thing you can do is make sure she knows she has support waiting. 7 times. Rick looked across the bar at Sophie, who was listlessly pushing French fries around her plate. How many times had Jennifer thought about leaving? How many times had she looked at her daughter and wondered if today was the day she found the courage? Evening fell. Rick called Jennifer's number from a burner phone. Webb answered. I told you to stay away. Let me talk to Jennifer. She doesn't want to talk to you. She wants you to leave her family alone. Her daughter's here. She deserves to know Sophie's safe. A pause. Then Webb's voice dripping with false concern. Sophie ran away? Oh God, Jennifer will be so worried. Tell you what, I'll come pick her up right now. Thanks for keeping her safe. Rick's grip tightened on the phone. Sophie's staying with us until Jennifer can come get her herself. That's kidnapping. Webb's voice went cold. I'm a police officer reporting that motorcycle gang members are holding my stepdaughter against her will. How long do you think before every cop in the county descends on your little clubhouse? The threat hung in the air, real and immediate. Rick looked at Sophie, saw her watching him with those 2 old eyes, and felt the trap close around him. Webb was right. The law, the system, everything was on his side. Jennifer needs to come get her, herself, in person. Those are our terms. Another pause. Then, fine. She'll be there in 20 minutes, and then you stay away from both of them. This is your last chance, Morrison. I've been patient because I understand you think you're helping, but my patience has limits. The line went dead. Rick looked around at his brothers, at Maven's worried face, at Diesel's barely contained rage, at Sophie, who had asked them for help and was about to be handed back to the nightmare she'd run from. "She's coming." Rick's voice was hollow. 23 minutes later, Jennifer walked through the door. She'd changed clothes, put on makeup that almost covered the bruising. Almost. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Sophie." Her voice cracked. "Baby, you scared me so much." Sophie ran to her mother, but stopped short of hugging her, like she was afraid of causing pain. "Mom, you don't have to go back. These people will help. They promised." Jennifer knelt down, and Rick saw her wince. "Sweetheart, these nice people did help. They kept you safe. But now we need to go home." "Home?" Sophie's voice rose. "Mom, he's going to hurt you again. You know he is." Jennifer's smile never wavered, but tears tracked down her cheeks. "It's going to be fine, baby. Marcus and I talked. He's sorry about earlier. It was just a misunderstanding. Everything's going to be fine. The practiced lies, the desperate optimism, the hope despite all evidence. Rick had heard it before, would hear it again. It never got easier." "Mrs. Webb." Rick tried one more time. "You don't have to do this. We have resources, safe houses, lawyers. You and Sophie can walk out that door and never look back." Jennifer finally looked at him, really looked at him, and in her eyes, Rick saw not just fear, but calculation. She was weighing options, measuring risks, doing the math that every abuse victim did. Stay and maybe survive. Leave and definitely face his rage. Leave and put not just herself, but Sophie, her mother, her friends, everyone she loved in danger because Webb would come after them all. "Thank you for keeping Sophie safe." Jennifer's voice was steady. "But this is a family matter. We'll handle it ourselves." She took Sophie's hand and walked toward the door. Sophie looked back once, her face a mask of betrayal and resignation. Rick had promised. Rick had failed. The door closed behind them. Maven broke the silence. "We can't let them go back there. We just did." Rick's voice was rough, because the alternative was a fight we couldn't win. Not today. "So what now?" Torch demanded. Rick looked around at his brothers and sisters, at 23 people who'd dropped everything to help a terrified child, who wanted nothing more than to ride back to that house and drag Jennifer and Sophie to safety by force if necessary. Good people who were being beaten by a system designed to protect men like Marcus Webb. Now we make him wish he'd never put his hands on them. Rick's voice was quiet, deadly. "We can't break the law. But we can make so much noise, shine so many lights, gather so many witnesses that he can't hide anymore. Maven, start making calls. Every MC chapter you know. Diesel, contact the media. Torch, get in touch with victim advocates, domestic violence organizations, anyone who'll listen. We're going to make Marcus Webb famous." "And if that doesn't work?" Knuckles asked. Rick's smile was cold. "Then we get creative. But one way or another, we keep our promise to that little girl. She asked for help. We don't let her down." The Iron Knights began to ride. Within an hour of Jennifer and Sophie leaving, Big Rick's phone became a weapon. He stood in the back office of the Roadhouse, surrounded by filing cabinets covered in event flyers and photos of charity rides, and started making the calls that would change everything. The first number he dialed belonged to Raymond Diesel Thompson, president of the Desert Riders MC out of Nevada. Rick and Raymond had ridden together for 20 years, had pulled each other out of bar fights and bad marriages, had stood as best men at each other's weddings. When Raymond answered on the second ring, Rick didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Ray, I need the brotherhood, all of it." He told the story in clipped sentences, each word chosen for maximum impact. An 8-year-old girl running barefoot through town, a mother's face purple with bruises, a cop using his badge as a shield while his fellow officers looked the other way, a system that protected predators when they wore the right uniform. Raymond was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then his voice came through, low and dangerous. "How many do you need?" "Everyone you can get." Rick's hand tightened on the phone. "We're organizing something big, something that can't be ignored. I need boots on the ground, Ray. I need enough leather and chrome that every camera in the state points at us." "When?" "Tomorrow, noon. I know it's short notice, but We'll be there. Raymond cut him off. I'll make calls. How many can I promise? Rick did the math in his head. The Desert Riders had chapters across Nevada and California, maybe 200 members total. As many as you can spare. This is for a kid, Ray. A little girl who did everything right and got abandoned anyway. Say no more. Raymond's voice went soft. My daughter's 8, Rick. Same age. I'll move heaven and earth. What's the address? Rick gave him the details, then hung up and dialed the next number. Then the next. Then the next. Each call was a stone dropped in still water, ripples spreading outward, touching more lives, gathering more strength. He called Maria Steele Rodriguez, president of the Thunder Valley MC in Arizona. Maria answered from her garage where she was rebuilding a 1967 Triumph, and when Rick finished talking, he heard the wrench hit concrete. A cop. She spat the word. Figures. You know what they did when my sister tried to leave her husband? Detective husband, real piece of work. They escorted her back home, told her to work it out. She's got scars she'll carry forever because the Brotherhood protected one of their own. Count us in, 50 riders, minimum. He called James Hammer Washington, a former Marine who ran the Steel Horsemen out of Colorado. Hammer had done 3 tours in Afghanistan, had lost half his unit in Helmand Province, and had come home to find that the real war was helping people survive their own lives. We're 6 hours away. Hammer's voice was already moving, already planning. But we'll ride through the night if we have to. Nobody hurts kids on our watch. I'll bring 40, maybe 50. Got some brothers who work nights, but they'll call in sick. He called Thomas Prophet Chen, whose Ventura County Riders had been around since the 1970s and commanded respect across California. Prophet was 72 years old, had buried 2 wives and more brothers than he could count, and still rode a 1980 shovelhead that sounded like thunder. This what we've come to? Prophet's voice crackled with age and anger. Cops beating their wives while their buddies look the other way? My grandson's 8 years old, Rick. I think about someone hurting his mama and I see red. We ride. 30 of us, and I'll call my friends in the Guardians. They'll add another 20. The calls multiplied. Maven worked her phone simultaneously, reaching out to women's MC chapters, support groups, victim advocates she'd worked with over the years. Diesel was on social media, carefully crafting a message that would spread without giving Webb ammunition to claim harassment. By 10 p.m., the back office looked like a war room. Torch had set up a laptop showing a spreadsheet of confirmed riders. The numbers kept climbing. Desert Riders, 53 confirmed. Thunder Valley MC, 48 confirmed. Steel Horsemen, 52 and counting. Ventura County Riders, 31. The Guardians, 24. Iron Knights, every single member, 78 total. Knuckles was on the phone with Danny Mendez, the lawyer, making sure everything they planned was absolutely legal. Can't give them any excuse to arrest us or claim we're threatening. We need to be squeaky clean. Every move by the book. Maven had contacted 3 different domestic violence organizations, and now Sarah Martinez was on her way to the Roadhouse. Sarah ran a shelter 2 towns over, was a survivor herself, and had connections that could make things happen. She arrived at 11 p.m., a woman in her late 40s with gray-streaked hair pulled into a ponytail and eyes that had seen too much but refused to look away. She walked into the office like she owned it, surveyed the room full of bikers, and got straight to business. Tell me everything. Not the emotional version, the facts. Sarah pulled out a notebook and pen. Rick walked her through it chronologically. Sophie's arrival, the confrontation at the house, Webb's manipulation, the forced return. Sarah took notes, her face neutral but her pen pressing harder with each detail. When Rick finished, Sarah looked up. Okay, here's what you need to understand. What you're planning, a mass demonstration, it can work, but it can also backfire spectacularly. If you come in hot, if anyone makes a threat or throws a punch, Webb will spin it. Dangerous bikers terrorize police officer and his family. Every news outlet will run with it. You'll be the bad guys and he'll be the victim. So what do we do? Maven leaned forward. Sarah smiled, and it was sharp as a knife. You do exactly what you're doing, but you do it smart. You don't threaten. You witness, you don't demand, you support, you make it clear you're there for Jennifer and Sophie, not against Webb, even though we all know that's bullshit. She flipped through her notes. I'll have advocates there, domestic violence. Counselors, representatives from women's shelters. We'll have information packets for Jennifer. We'll set up a hotline she can call 24/7. We make it impossible for her to say she has no options. What about the cops? Diesel crossed his arms. They'll try to shut us down. Let them try. Sarah's smile widened. I've already contacted ACLU lawyers. Peaceful assembly is protected. As long as you're not blocking traffic or trespassing, they can't do anything. And if they try, well, that's another story for the media. Speaking of media, Torch looked up from his laptop. I've got 3 news stations interested. Local channels, but they feed to national networks. I told them about the 8-year-old girl, about the cop, about bikers coming from 5 states to stand up for domestic violence victims. They're eating it up. Good, Sarah nodded. Make sure they talk to me too. I'll give them statistics, context. Make it clear this isn't just about one family. This is about how the system fails victims, especially when the abuser has power and connections. The planning continued into the early morning hours. They mapped out logistics, parking arrangements, who would speak to media, who would handle legal issues if they arose. They contacted local businesses, made sure they weren't disrupting ordinary people just trying to live their lives. This was about applying pressure to one man, not making innocent bystanders suffer. At 2 a.m., Rick's phone rang. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Rick Morrison? A woman's voice, older, uncertain. Speaking. My name is Linda Patterson. I'm Marcus Webb's mother. Rick's blood went cold. He muted the room with a gesture. Everyone froze. Mrs. Patterson, what can I do for you? There was a long silence, then a shaking breath. I saw the messages online, the talk about what's happening, about Jennifer and Sophie. I need you to know I need someone to know this isn't the first time. Rick's hand tightened on the phone. Ma'am, I'm going to put you on speaker. These are people who are trying to help. Is that okay? Yes, please. Rick hit the button. Linda Patterson's voice filled the room, wavering but determined. Marcus is my son, and I love him. But he's done this before. His first wife, Amanda, she left him 8 years ago, took their son and disappeared, filed a restraining order. The department helped Marcus bury it, called it a bitter divorce, said Amanda was unstable. She wasn't. She was terrified. I saw the bruises. I begged her to press charges, but she said it was pointless, that he had too many friends in the force. Did you report it? Sarah's voice was gentle. I tried. Linda's voice cracked. I went to his captain. I told them my son was dangerous, that he needed help. They thanked me for my concern and did nothing. Said it was a family matter. 3 months later, Marcus met Jennifer. She was so young, so hopeful. Her husband had died, and she was lonely, and Marcus can be charming when he wants to be. I tried to warn her, but what could I say? Don't marry my son because I think he's a monster? She wouldn't have believed me anyway. They never do at first. Why are you calling now? Maven asked. Because I'm dying. Linda's words dropped like stones. Cancer. Stage 4. Maybe 6 months left. And I'm not going to die without trying one more time to stop him. If you're really organizing something, if you're really trying to help that woman and her little girl, I want to help. I'll testify. I'll go on camera. Whatever it takes. The room sat in stunned silence. Then Rick found his voice. Mrs. Patterson, that's incredibly brave. But are you sure? This will destroy your relationship with your son. Linda laughed, bitter and sad. He hasn't spoken to me in 3 years, not since I asked about Jennifer's black eye at Thanksgiving. My relationship with my son died a long time ago. I just want to save someone before I go. Sarah leaned toward the phone. Mrs. Patterson, this is Sarah Martinez. I run a domestic violence shelter. Would you be willing to meet with me tomorrow morning? Your testimony, combined with the first wife's restraining order, could be the leverage we need. I'll be there. Linda gave them her address. And Rick? Thank you for not giving up on them. That little girl, Sophie, she comes to my house sometimes when Marcus lets them visit. She's special. She deserves better than this. After they hung up, the room erupted. Diesel was pacing. Torch was already typing up a new statement. Maven had tears in her eyes. But Rick just sat there, staring at the phone, thinking about how many people had known, had seen, had suspected, and done nothing. By 4 a.m., the numbers on Torch's spreadsheet had grown beyond anything Rick expected. Word had spread through the biker community like wildfire, jumping from club to club, state to state, carried by people who understood that this could have been their daughter, their sister, their mother. Could have been them. The Iron Knights, 78, the Desert Riders, 61, Thunder Valley MC, 55, Steel Horsemen, 59, Ventura County Riders, 34, the Guardians, 28, Rebel Saints, 42, Freedom Riders, 37, Chrome Angels, 29, Sisters of Steel, All Women Chapter, 18, Grey Wolves, 41, Road Warriors, 33. The list went on. Veterans groups, motorcycle clubs that normally didn't associate with each other, solo riders who just showed up online and said, "Count me in." Teachers who rode on weekends, nurses who worked night shifts, construction workers and accountants and mechanics and grandmothers who'd been riding since the 1960s. By dawn, as the sun broke pink and gold over the horizon, Torch looked up from his laptop with something like awe on his face. 450 confirmed, maybe more rolling in throughout the morning. Rick stood at the window of his office, watching the sunrise paint the sky the colors of hope and vengeance. Behind him, his brothers and sisters were planning, coordinating, making sure every detail was perfect. Maven was on the phone with Sarah, finalizing the placement of advocates and counselors. Diesel was confirming parking arrangements with local businesses who'd offered their lots. Knuckles was reviewing legal documents with Danny Mendez one more time. At 7 a.m., Rick pulled out his phone and sent a single text to the burner number Jennifer had used yesterday. "We made a promise to your daughter. Tomorrow at noon, Maple Street. We're keeping it." He didn't expect a response, didn't get one. But somewhere in that blue house with the white fence, he hoped Jennifer saw it. Hoped she understood that when 450 people show up because one 8-year-old girl asked for help, it means something. It means she's not alone. It means the world is watching. It means that sometimes the good guys don't give up. The sound started at 11:15 a.m., a low rumble that grew steadily louder, like distant thunder rolling across a clear sky. People in the small town of Riverside stopped what they were doing. Shop owners stepped onto sidewalks. Parents pulled back curtains. Dogs started barking. The sound was coming from every direction at once, converging on Maple Street like a storm that had been building for days. Big Rick led the first wave, 78 Iron Knights riding in tight formation, their engines synchronized into a rhythmic roar that shook windows and set off car alarms. Behind them came the Desert Riders, 61 strong, their Nevada patches gleaming in the late morning sun. Then Thunder Valley MC from Arizona, Steel Horsemen from Colorado, Ventura County Riders from California, wave after wave of chrome and leather, bandanas and beards, determined faces that had ridden through the night to be here. They came down Main Street like a river of steel, but a river that flowed with purpose and precision. No wheelies, no racing, no aggressive riding that would give police an excuse to intervene. Just a steady, inexorable advance toward Maple Street, where a blue house with a white fence sat like any other suburban home, hiding secrets that were about to be dragged into the light. Rick had ridden 46 years, through rain and dust and snow, through protests and rallies and charity runs. He'd never seen anything like this. The line of motorcycles stretched back so far he couldn't see the end. Couldn't count all the clubs and chapters and solo riders who'd answered the call. 450 confirmed, Torch had said. But looking at the stream of bikes still arriving, Rick suspected the number was higher. They began parking in formation along Maple Street and the surrounding blocks. Local businesses had cleared their lots as promised, understanding this was bigger than commerce, bigger than convenience. The Riverside Diner, the AutoZone, the strip mall 2 blocks over, all opened their spaces. Bikers filed in with military precision, each knowing their assigned spot, each killing their engine at exactly the right moment. The silence after the engines died was profound. 450-plus bikers dismounting, removing helmets, adjusting their cuts, but not speaking. The plan was clear. Peaceful, silent, Overwhelming. They would bear witness, they would wait, they would make it impossible for anyone to look away. Rick walked to the front of the formation, where Maven, Diesel, Torch, and Knuckles had gathered. Behind them, spread across 4 blocks, stood an army. Not an army of violence, but of solidarity. Teachers in leather jackets with patches from the Sisters of Steel, veterans wearing their service records alongside their club colors, grandmothers who'd been riding since before Marcus Webb was born, business owners who'd closed their shops for the day, parents who'd brought their teenage kids to show them what standing up looked like. And in the middle of it all, Sarah Martinez, wearing a leather vest over a shirt that read "Survivor" in simple letters. She stood with 6 other advocates from her organization, each carrying informational packets, each ready to provide resources, support, whatever Jennifer needed when she was ready. The media arrived at 11:30. 3 news vans, cameras already rolling, reporters scrambling to set up. Rick had coordinated with them, but seeing it happen still sent a jolt through him. This was it. The moment when everything became public, when Webb's private violence became everyone's business. Channel 7's reporter, a young woman named Amanda Torres, approached Rick first. Her cameraman followed, the red recording light already on. "Mr. Morrison, can you tell us what's happening here?" Rick had practiced this, had worked with Sarah to craft words that would tell the truth without giving Webb's lawyers ammunition. "We're here to support a family in crisis. 2 days ago, an 8-year-old girl ran to my establishment asking for help. She said her mother was being hurt. We responded, we tried to help, but we found ourselves unable to protect this family through normal channels. So we're here today to make sure they know they're not alone, to make sure everyone knows that domestic violence is not acceptable, even when the abuser wears a badge." Amanda's eyes widened. "Are you saying a police officer is involved? I'm saying that when a child asks for help, we answer. And we don't stop answering until that child is safe." Rick's voice was steady, firm. "We're not here to threaten anyone. We're here to witness, to stand, to be the safety net that should have existed already." Other reporters converged, asking similar questions. Diesel spoke to Channel 4, his massive frame somehow gentle as he explained, "I have 3 daughters. If one of them was in trouble, if she asked strangers for help because she had nowhere else to turn, I'd want those strangers to show up. So that's what we're doing. Showing up." Maven talked to Channel 12, her grandmother's face lined with both compassion and steel. "The system failed this family. It happens too often. When the abuser has power, has connections, has a badge, victims feel like they have no recourse. We're here to show them they do. They have us. They have their community. They have people who won't look away." Inside the blue house with the white fence, Detective Marcus Webb stood at the living room window, his face slack with disbelief. Jennifer stood behind him, holding Sophie, watching the street fill with bikers like a slow-motion flood. Sophie's eyes were huge, moving from motorcycle to motorcycle, seeing patch after patch, counting numbers that kept growing. They came. Sophie's voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, they came. Look how many came." Jennifer couldn't speak. Her throat was closed, her eyes burning. 400 people, maybe more. 400 people who didn't know her, who owed her nothing, standing in formation because her daughter had asked for help. The magnitude of it was crushing and liberating all at once. Webb's phone buzzed, then again, then continuously. He looked at the screen and his face went white. Text messages, dozens of them, from colleagues, from friends, from his captain, all asking the same question. "What the hell's going on? Why are there hundreds of bikers outside your house?" His hands trembled as he dialed his captain, Samuel Harrison, a 28-year veteran who'd covered for Webb more times than anyone should have. Harrison answered on the first ring. "Marcus, what in the name of God did you do?" "Sir, I can explain. This is harassment. These bikers are criminals trying to intimidate me and my family. I need units here now to clear them out." There was a long pause. "Marcus, there are news cameras. There are reporters asking about domestic violence, about a little girl asking for help. There are questions about why responding officers didn't file a report 2 days ago. There are social media posts going viral with photos of your wife's injuries." Harrison's voice went cold. Tell me the truth, right now. Is any of this true? Webb's mind raced, calculating, spinning. Sir, my wife fell. She's clumsy, she has dizzy spells. These bikers are trying to create a narrative that doesn't exist. This is defamation. This is slander. I need support here. Another pause, longer this time. Marcus, I'm getting calls from the mayor's office, from the press, from internal affairs. If this is what I think it is, if you put your hands on your wife, you're on your own. Do you understand? I can't protect you from this. Nobody can. The line went dead. Webb stared at his phone, feeling his carefully constructed world start to crumble. He turned to Jennifer, and for the first time, she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Fear. You did this. His voice was low, dangerous. You called them. You told them lies. I didn't. Jennifer's voice shook but held. I didn't call anyone. Sophie did. She ran away because she couldn't watch you hurt me anymore. Webb took a step toward her and Sophie screamed, high and piercing and terrified. The sound carried through the open window, and every single biker on the street heard it. 450 people tensed simultaneously, hands curling into fists, bodies shifting forward. The line held, but barely. Rick's phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. That scream. We need to move now. But before Rick could respond, the front door of the house opened. Not Webb, Jennifer. She stood in the doorway, one arm around Sophie, the other hand gripping the doorframe like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her face was pale, except for the bruises, her eyes red from crying, but her chin was lifted. The cameras swiveled immediately, every lens, every microphone, every pair of eyes focused on the woman in the doorway. Jennifer looked at the bikers, at the reporters, at the advocates standing ready with their packets and their phone numbers and their promises of safety. She looked at the neighbors watching from windows, at the police cars that had arrived but weren't approaching, at the world that had suddenly decided to pay attention. Her mouth opened, closed. She was trembling so hard, Sophie had to help hold her up. Then she looked directly at a camera and spoke words that would echo across news channels for days. My name is Jennifer Webb. This is my daughter, Sophie. 2 days ago, she ran away to ask for help because my husband, Detective Marcus Webb, was beating me. She's 8 years old and she had to save me because I couldn't save myself. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. The police came. They saw my injuries. They did nothing. Because my husband is one of them. Because the system protects its own. Behind her, Webb appeared, grabbing her arm. Jennifer, stop. Don't do this. But Jennifer shook him off. The first time in 2 years she'd physically resisted him. No, I'm done. I'm done pretending this is normal. I'm done pretending I fell. I'm done protecting you while you destroy us. Sarah Martinez was moving before Rick could stop her, crossing the street with 2 advocates flanking her. The cameras followed. Sarah walked right up to the porch, ignoring Webb completely, focusing entirely on Jennifer. My name is Sarah Martinez. I run a domestic violence shelter 2 towns over. 8 years ago, I was where you are now, terrified, trapped, certain I had no options. Her voice was clear, carrying to every microphone. My husband was a district attorney. He had power, connections, friends in every corner of the system. When I finally tried to leave, he had me declared mentally unstable. I lost custody of my kids for 6 months. Jennifer's eyes locked on Sarah's, desperate and hopeful. But I got them back. Sarah took another step closer, because I found people who believed me, who stood with me, who made enough noise that the system couldn't ignore it anymore. The way these people are standing with you right now, you're not alone, Jennifer. You have never been more not alone than you are in this moment. The silence was profound. Jennifer looked at Sarah, at the 450 bikers standing witness, at Sophie, whose face was pressed against her side, whose faith in humanity had been tested and somehow miraculously rewarded, at Webb, whose power was evaporating with every second of camera time, every reporter taking notes, every neighbor watching. Then she looked at Rick, the man who'd promised her daughter he wouldn't give up, the man who'd kept that promise. I want to leave. Jennifer's voice was barely audible, but the microphones caught it. I want to take my daughter somewhere safe. Will you help me?" "Yes." The word came from 450 throats simultaneously, a roar of affirmation that shook the street. Webb lunged. Sarah and two advocates blocked him. Police officers finally moved, but not to protect Webb. Officers Ramirez and Patterson, the same ones who'd stood by 2 days ago, now stepped between Webb and his family. Ramirez looked sick, but his voice was firm. "Detective Webb, you need to step back, right now. You're arresting me?" Webb's voice rose to a shout. "For what? I haven't done anything." Ramirez met his eyes. "No, sir. But internal affairs is on their way, and until they arrive, you're not going near your family. The cameras captured everything. Webb's rage, Jennifer's tears, Sophie's trembling hope, the wall of bikers standing silent and strong. The moment when power shifted, when visibility became protection, when 450 people decided that one 8-year-old girl's cry for help mattered more than keeping the peace. Sarah guided Jennifer and Sophie off the porch toward a waiting van from the shelter. Advocates surrounded them, creating a human shield. As they passed through the line of bikers, hands reached out, not grabbing, not threatening, just touching Jennifer's shoulder, Sophie's hair, offering silent solidarity. "You're safe now. We've got you. You're not alone." Sophie looked up at Big Rick as they passed. "You kept your promise." Rick knelt down, his scarred face level with hers. "Always will, kid. That's what family does." The van pulled away with Jennifer and Sophie inside, headed toward safety, toward counseling, toward the long road of healing. The bikers remained, a wall between the house and the van, making sure Webb couldn't follow, making sure the promise held. And when the news aired that night, when the story went viral, when hashtags started trending and politicians started making statements, when Marcus Webb was placed on administrative leave and Internal Affairs opened a full investigation, people across the country saw what 450 ordinary people could do when they decided that violence in the dark wouldn't be tolerated anymore. They saw what happens when someone keeps a promise to an 8-year-old girl. The bikers didn't leave. Even after Jennifer and Sophie were safely in the van, even after the news crews packed up their equipment, promising to run the story on the evening broadcast, the Iron Knights and their brothers and sisters from 5 states remained. They stood in formation on Maple Street as the sun climbed higher, as neighbors ventured out to bring them water and sandwiches, as the world watched through social media feeds that had exploded with shares and comments and outrage. Big Rick positioned himself on the front line, directly across from the blue house with the white fence. Inside, Detective Marcus Webb paced like a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear, making call after call to lawyers, union representatives, anyone who might salvage his crumbling empire. Through the window, Rick could see him gesturing wildly, see the desperation in movements that had always been so controlled, so calculated. At 2:47 p.m., 3 unmarked cars pulled onto Maple Street. Not city police, county sheriff's department. The distinction mattered. Sheriff's deputies had jurisdiction, but weren't part of Webb's protective network, weren't beholden to Captain Harrison or the unwritten codes that had shielded Webb for years. Sheriff Rebecca Morrison stepped out of the lead vehicle, a woman in her mid-50s with steel-gray hair and a reputation for integrity that had earned her 3 terms. She surveyed the scene, taking in the hundreds of bikers, the news vans that had returned when someone tipped them off, the neighbors clustered in yards. Her eyes found Rick, and she walked directly to him. "Mr. Morrison," her voice was level, professional. "I'm Sheriff Morrison, no relation despite the name. I need to understand what's happening here." Rick had prepared for this moment, had rehearsed with Sarah and Danny Mendez exactly what to say. "Sheriff, we're exercising our constitutional right to peaceful assembly. We're not blocking traffic, not trespassing, not threatening anyone. We're standing in support of domestic violence victims, and we're not leaving until we're confident they're safe." Morrison studied him for a long moment. The little girl who asked for help. Sophie. Where is she now? Safe house with her mother. Domestic violence advocates are with them. Medical examination scheduled for this evening. Full documentation of injuries. Jennifer Webb is ready to give a formal statement without her husband present. The sheriff nodded slowly. And Detective Webb is inside that house, probably destroying evidence and calling everyone he knows to make this go away. Rick held her gaze. We're here to make sure that doesn't happen, Sheriff. We're here to make sure the system works the way it's supposed to, even when it's inconvenient. Morrison's lips twitched, almost a smile. Stay peaceful. Stay legal. And Mr. Morrison? Thank you for not giving up on them. She turned and walked toward the house, 2 deputies flanking her. Webb opened the door before she could knock, his face flushed, his voice already rising. Sheriff Morrison, thank God you're here. These criminals have been harassing my family, making wild accusations. I need them removed immediately. Detective Webb. Morrison's voice cut through his bluster like a blade. I'm here to inform you that Internal Affairs has opened a formal investigation into allegations of domestic violence. You're being placed on immediate administrative leave. Badge and weapon, please. The color drained from Webb's face. This is ridiculous. My wife fell. She's clumsy. These bikers convinced her to lie. Your wife gave a preliminary statement an hour ago. She's undergoing a medical examination as we speak. Morrison held out her hand. Badge and weapon. Now. I want my union rep. I want my lawyer. Webb's voice rose. You can't do this. I have rights. You absolutely do. And you'll have every opportunity to exercise them. But right now, you're under investigation, and you need to surrender your badge and weapon. Morrison's tone left no room for argument. Webb's hands shook as he unclipped his badge, as he removed his service weapon from the holster at his hip. The surrender of those symbols felt like a death, like everything he'd built crumbling into dust. He thrust them at Morrison with barely controlled rage. This isn't over. His voice was low, threatening. I have friends. I have connections. You're making a huge mistake. The only mistake was thinking your badge made you untouchable. Morrison turned to her deputies. Make sure Detective Webb stays inside until we've completed our preliminary investigation. No visitors, no phone calls to potential witnesses. You can't hold me prisoner in my own home. Webb took a step forward. Morrison met his eyes with cold precision. Would you prefer we take you into custody right now? Because your wife's injuries are well documented, your daughter's testimony is damning, and we have probable cause. I'm offering you the courtesy of staying in your home during the initial investigation. Don't make me regret it. Webb's jaw worked, rage and fear warring across his face. He stepped back, slammed the door. Morrison returned to Rick. He's contained. Internal Affairs will be here within the hour. They'll process the scene, collect evidence, interview neighbors. She paused. The medical examiner found injuries consistent with repeated trauma. Old bruises under new ones, healed fractures. This has been going on a long time. Rick's hands curled into fists. 2 years since they got married, and everyone looked the other way. Not everyone. Morrison gestured at the hundreds of bikers still standing watch. These people didn't look away. She pulled out a business card, handed it to Rick. My direct line. If Jennifer needs anything, if there are any threats or complications, you call me immediately. As Morrison's vehicles pulled away, Big Rick felt something shift in the air. The waiting was over. The wheels of justice, so slow to turn, were finally moving. He pulled out his phone and called Sarah at the safe house. How are they? Rick asked when she answered. Jennifer's shaking but holding together. Sarah's voice was gentle. The medical exam was hard, having to catalog every injury, every scar, having to speak out loud what he did to her. But she's doing it. She's being so brave, Rick. And Sophie, she's right there with her mom, holding her hand through everything. Tell them we're still here. Tell them we're not going anywhere until they say it's safe. I will. Sarah paused. Rick, you should know, Jennifer wants to thank you all personally. When she's ready, when she's stronger, she wants to meet every single person who showed up today. 3 days later, Marcus Webb was arrested. Not quietly, not with the professional courtesy usually extended to law enforcement. The sheriff's department executed the arrest at 6 a.m. News cameras present by anonymous tip, capturing Webb in handcuffs being led from his house. The charges were extensive. Multiple counts of domestic battery, assault, child endangerment, witness intimidation, and filing false police reports. His bail was set at $500,000. He posted it within hours, union funds and personal savings, but the damage was done. The image of Detective Marcus Webb in handcuffs was front-page news, was shared millions of times, became the face of a conversation the country needed to have about domestic violence, police accountability, and institutional protection of abusers. The Riverside Police Department faced its own reckoning. Officers Ramirez and Patterson were suspended pending investigation into their failure to file a report or provide assistance to a domestic violence victim. Captain Harrison was forced into early retirement after it emerged. He'd buried 3 previous complaints about Webb's behavior. The department's entire protocol for handling domestic violence, calls involving law enforcement, was scrutinized, reformed, made public. But the real story, the one that kept spreading, was about 450 ordinary people who refused to look away. The biker community established the Sophie's Hope Fund within a week. Contributions poured in from across the country, from riders and non-riders alike, people moved by an 8-year-old girl's courage and a community's response. The fund would provide housing assistance for Jennifer and Sophie, therapy costs, legal fees, and eventually college savings for Sophie. Within a month, it had raised over $300,000. More importantly, it became a template. Other communities reached out, asking how to organize similar responses. Domestic violence advocates partnered with motorcycle clubs in 6 states, creating rapid response networks for victims who needed visible support. The model was simple but powerful. When the system fails, when someone in power abuses that power, ordinary people standing together can force change. Jennifer and Sophie stayed in the safe house for 3 weeks, until Webb was formally indicted and a restraining order was secured. During that time, bikers maintained a rotating watch, 2 or 3 always present, making sure Webb couldn't find them, couldn't threaten or intimidate. Maven organized the schedule, grandmother that she was, making sure no shift was left uncovered. Sophie began therapy with a counselor who specialized in childhood trauma. Progress was slow, but real. The nightmares didn't disappear overnight, but they became less frequent. The hypervigilance, that constant scanning for danger, gradually eased. And through it all, Sophie knew she was safe because she could look out any window and see someone wearing leather and patches, someone who'd proven they would show up when she needed them. Jennifer's journey was harder. Years of abuse don't heal in weeks or months. She had to rebuild not just her life, but her sense of self, her belief that she deserved better, her understanding that what happened wasn't her fault. Sarah and the other advocates were patient, experienced, never pushing, but always present. The trial began 6 months after Sophie ran into Big Rick's Roadhouse. Webb's lawyers tried every tactic. Character assassination, claiming Jennifer was unstable, suggesting the bikers had coerced her testimony. But the evidence was overwhelming. Medical records, photographs, Sophie's testimony delivered with heartbreaking clarity. Linda Patterson, Webb's dying mother, appeared via video link from hospice, confirming her son's history of violence. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Webb was sentenced to 12 years in prison, would likely serve 8 with good behavior. It wasn't enough, would never be enough to balance the scales, but it was something. It was justice, imperfect and incomplete, but justice nonetheless. Through it all, the biker community remained, not as visible as that first day, but constant. Maven checked in weekly, bringing groceries and conversation. Diesel helped Jennifer move into a new apartment, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs and assembling furniture with patient care. Torch set up a scholarship fund for Sophie, ensuring she'd have options when college came. Knuckles, the former Marine, became an unlikely friend to Sophie, teaching her that strong people protect others, that real courage isn't about violence, but about standing up when it's hard. And Rick, Big Rick, who'd taken a frightened child's plea seriously, who'd made a promise and kept it, became family. Not a replacement father, never that, but a constant presence, a reminder that the world had good people in it, that asking for help was brave, not weak. 9 months after that desperate Saturday afternoon, on a warm spring day when the world smelled like hope and new beginnings, Sophie and Jennifer walked into Big Rick's Roadhouse. The place went silent, then erupted into cheers. Sophie was different now, still 8, still small for her age, but she walked with her head up, smiled easily. When Rick knelt down to greet her, she hugged him without hesitation, without fear. "You kept your promise." Sophie's voice was strong, clear. "You said you wouldn't give up. You didn't. Never will, kid." Rick's voice was rough with emotion. That's what family does. Jennifer stood behind her daughter, and the change in her was even more profound. She'd put on weight, healthy weight that came from not living in constant stress. Her eyes were clear. She wore a dress that wasn't meant to hide bruises, that was chosen because she liked it. When Maven hugged her, Jennifer hugged back, long and tight. The afternoon became a celebration. Bikers from all the clubs that had shown up that day had gathered, drawn by the news that Sophie and Jennifer were coming. They shared food and stories, played pool and darts, treated Sophie like the honored guest she was. She sat at the bar on a stool that made her feet dangle, drinking a Shirley Temple that Diesel had made with elaborate care, surrounded by people who wore leather and tattoos and fierce loyalty. At one point, a new family came in, a woman with haunted eyes and a small boy holding her hand. She approached Rick hesitantly. "Are you the ones who helped Jennifer Webb?" Her voice trembled. "I saw the story online. I have a similar situation. My husband is a city councilman. Nobody will believe me. I don't know where else to go." Rick looked at Maven, at Sarah who'd come for the celebration, at the 100 bikers filling the roadhouse. He looked at Sophie, who was watching the woman with recognition in her eyes, the recognition of shared experience. "You came to the right place?" Rick's voice was gentle. "We've got you. That's what we do." As the sun set over the roadhouse, painting the sky orange and gold, Sophie stood at the window watching bikers arrive and depart, their motorcycles gleaming in the fading light. Jennifer came up beside her, putting an arm around her daughter's shoulders. "Are you okay, baby?" Jennifer asked softly. Sophie nodded. "I was thinking about that day, when I ran here. I was so scared nobody would help. But they did." Jennifer's voice held wonder and gratitude. 450 people came because you were brave enough to ask." Sophie leaned against her mother. "Do you think we really changed things, like Sarah said? That other people will be helped because we spoke up? I know we did." Jennifer looked around the room, at the family they'd found in the most unexpected place. Sometimes all it takes is one person being brave. Then others are brave too. Then everything changes. Through the window, they watched as more motorcycles pulled up, members checking in on their family, making sure promises were being kept. The sound of engines, once threatening in Sophie's memory, now meant something different. Safety, community, people who showed up. Big Rick approached them, his weathered face creased with a smile. "You two about ready to head out? I've got Diesel waiting to escort you home. Make sure you get there safe." Sophie turned to him. This mountain of a man with scars and tattoos and a heart that had room for one more broken family. "Uncle Rick?" The title came naturally now, earned through action, not blood. "When I grow up, I want to help people like you helped us." Rick knelt down one more time, meeting her eyes. "You already are, sweetheart. Every time you tell your story, every time someone sees that asking for help worked, that good people exist, that promises can be kept, you're already helping. You're already making the world better." As Jennifer and Sophie left the roadhouse that evening, protected by an escort of bikers who would see them safely home, the television above the bar played the news. Another story about domestic violence, about victims finding courage, about communities organizing to protect the vulnerable. The reporter mentioned Sophie's case, held it up as an example of what was possible when people refused to look away. Maven watched the broadcast, then looked around at her brothers and sisters. "We started something. That little girl started something." "No," Rick corrected her gently. "She finished something. She finished the silence. She finished the looking away. She finished the idea that victims are alone. And we just showed up when someone asked for help. That's all. That's everything." The roadhouse hummed with conversation and laughter, with the sound of family gathered and promises kept. Outside, the sun disappeared below the horizon, and the neon sign flickered to life. Big Rick's Roadhouse, all welcome. And in homes across the country, in shelters and safe houses, in quiet, desperate moments when courage seemed impossible, people remembered. They remembered an 8-year-old girl who ran to bikers for help. They remembered 450 people who showed up because one child asked. They remembered that sometimes the scariest-looking people are exactly who you need when the world looks away. They remembered that promises, when made by the right people, are always kept. The story of Sophie and Jennifer Webb became more than a news cycle, more than a viral moment. It became a reminder that ordinary people doing extraordinary things can shift the world on its axis. That visibility is protection. That standing together matters. That when one voice cries out, 450 can answer. And every single one of those answering voices had promised the same thing. We see you. We hear you. We won't let you fall. In the end, that's what saved them. Not laws or systems or institutions, though those eventually caught up. What saved Jennifer and Sophie was simpler and more profound. People who refused to walk away when a child asked for help. People who understood that some promises are sacred. People who showed up